And I'm back, still catching up with For All Mankind. In this episode, I'm going to be reviewing, well, episode 404. So you might have seen it already, but if you haven't, this will contain spoilers. And as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review. But before I get into the video, just to say thanks for taking the time to choose to watch this channel. I really appreciate it, and if you haven't done already, please subscribe and leave a like on the video as well. So on Mars, things are still tense with the Russians not knowing what's going on back home. We see a team of Soviet workers, including Svetlana, go about their daily life on Mars, talking about the different sides in the Russian conflict back home. But tensions boil over, resulting in an accident where one of the cosmonauts is pushed over and his suit tears. He doesn't die, and they're still sort of waiting to see what the long-term damage might be, but Ed and Danielle talk about what to do next. Danielle is worried about the Russian infighting and pulls Svetlana from the asteroid mission. It turns out Vasily, the Russian who had the tear in his suit, is connected back on Earth because they want Svetlana back home to stand trial for basically attempted murder. However, Mars doesn't want to give up a valuable team member, and this might lead to Russia withdrawing from the agreement that all the Mars nations have signed. And they do play into this fact a little bit more later on, and I'll get to that in a minute. In the Russian side of Happy Valley, or I should say the Russian population, is definitely getting ready, or I should say preparing for some changes. They're starting to change the base systems back to Russian standard, probably to isolate the non-Russian speakers on base. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Margot is taken to her new role with the Russian space program, seemingly in the thick of it. But will this have bigger implications politically down the line, I wonder? Yep, I'm going to get into that as well. And we don't know exactly yet how this new Soviet regime is going to conduct its affairs in space. But back home, it's doing what Dev done when he got Helios back and getting rid of all the people that opposed the previous regime and the previous sort of plans that they had to develop space. Margot is making friends in her new role with another member of the program called Tatiana, who's really the only one given all the time of day and willing to get to know her. Margot learns that there may have been a cover-up on a previous mission and helps to expose it. It's not huge per se, just to establish that Margot is on board with helping the Russians, and her new boss really sees the value in bringing her on board here. But the guy who takes the blame is basically imprisoned for the cover-up or killed, so the new regime isn't exactly playing nice or fair, and you've got to wonder what they're going to do with Svetlana once they get her back on Earth. Speaking of which, the other powers don't want her to be tried in Russia or the United States, but want it to happen in India, because they're a neutral partner in the Mars mission, but there's some pushback no doubt as the Russians want a show trial, but either way, she's on her way back to Earth. Back on Mars, Miles is still involved in the black market with Ilya now and the Koreans on board. The incident at the start of the episode has fueled the rumour mill on Mars, adding further fuel to the class divide that we're seeing between Miles' storyline and Danielle, Ed, and basically everyone else that works for NASA on Helios on the base. Miles has an idea to make more money, which is basically to transport Mars rocks back home to sell as souvenirs, as the one that he gave to his wife she managed to sell for thousands of dollars and has actually helped secure a better position for her family. So it turns out that Miles being on Mars isn't the big dud that he thought it was after all, and he takes this new side hustle and starts rolling with it without telling Ilya, so essentially he's sort of ripping off the guy that got him into the black market trade in the first place. He recruits a few friends to help him out with his mission to send rocks back home, because he needs things like spacesuits, access to tools and vehicles to get outside, and obviously a way to transport the rocks back to Earth. And it's all done in the black market way of bribing people, giving things what they want and making promises, that sort of thing. He does manage to get his hands on an older style spacesuit similar to the ones that they wore in Season 3 on Mars, and as he's not used to it because it's a lot heavier frame, he trips up and falls but doesn't have any damage to his suit, unlike Ilya at the start of the episode. Now, although he's managed to recruit a few people into his sort of gang on Mars, he has gone outside alone, and it's his bunk and workmate Sam that realises he's missing and decides to go after him to try and save him. Margot's new friend at her new job, Tatiana, is upset about the guy Margot exposed, as he's no doubt suffering the same fate that she did last week or worse. So we learn that mistakes aren't tolerated in the space program, at least in this new Russian regime. And speaking of mistakes, Danielle confronts Ed about how he's treated people over his life, how he's favoured some, disliked others, and you're namely talking about Gordo and Danny from the first Mars mission. Now, it hasn't really been confirmed what happened to Danny yet. We know that he didn't make it home, we just don't know the circumstances or what's going on there. The fact that they don't openly talk about it in public probably means that they were involved in either his death or the cover-up of his death, but as always, we're going to have to wait and see. It wasn't the huge head-to-head conflict I was expecting, but you can tell pressure is building on Ed, and this is compromising his decision-making. Another great episode of For All Mankind, and I love how they're developing the political side back on Earth, while having a sort of class war play out behind the scenes on Mars. This is something that's kind of been missing from the show, or at least that they've not focused on that much in the first few seasons, and I'm glad that they're showing how effects on one world can affect the other and vice versa, and how we're sort of falling into the old habits and making the same mistakes on Mars that we've made on Earth. So I wonder how they're going to change this, or are the characters going to realise it as the season goes on, but as always, we're going to have to wait and see. I'm still catching up with all my For All Mankind reviews, and I'll be back to doing weekly episodes, well, this week, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And as always, I want to hear what you guys think is going to happen over the rest of the season. I have seen all the episodes up to episode 6, but I'm dropping the reviews as if I normally would weekly, so you can post spoilers and talk about it in the comments. That's absolutely fine, or you can reach out to me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at the Geeks Reviews. If you've made it this far, as always, leave a like on the video, and my name's Al. Thanks for watching.